Okay, let's go and dive in here. Here, look at elections and different election processes. Look at some of the different ballot styles and different processes in different states last time. We'll look at what the national election stands here. Again, University of Florida Election Lab, what they got so far. Now, 8.7 million early votes. With 2 million in person, mail ballots returned 6.5 million out of 55 million. So a lot of people voted since last thing that. 833,000 in Florida, 620,000 in Georgia. They set a record for the first day voting on Monday. 15,000 in Virginia, Pennsylvania, 690,000. Ohio, 719,000, 857,000 in Michigan. So people are voting. Now, who they're voting for, not quite sure. Get some indications, but a lot of the patterns are similar to 2020. There's no indication in the election so far as any kind of major shift in voting patterns. What ultimately will happen, who knows? Voting by registration, what we have available, it's only a fraction of those states that purport by voting by registration. Again, this is similar to a pattern you see in 2020. Democrats tending to vote early, Republicans tending to vote later. Electoralvote.com, substantial change. Georgia, North Carolina, so close, just flipping back and forth. It's a lot of polls, really weird results. They had an interesting article here. What if the polls are wrong? It don't happen. Well, how did that affect the election? A lot of polling we're seeing so far is Harris up 3 or 4 points, maybe. But what if those are wrong? What if it's a tie or goes one way or another? From their charts, this is what the Electoral College trend has been throughout the election. Since Harris jumped into the race, she's jumped up to the lead here by the beginning of August, and Harris in the lead steadily since then. As an electoral vote, and one of them is a historian, and the other is a computer scientist. Two guys were running it. So individual pollsters may have some built-in bias. True, they call it the House effect. That they don't even know about. Hopes by averaging all the recent polls, they'll cancel out to a large extent. What if it doesn't? What if on the whole the polls are biased a few points one way or another? How much difference would that make? That's why when you're looking at a poll, don't necessarily look at the final results. Look at the they call it crosstabs, breaking down by individual demographic territory. You're getting some weird results that really kind of puts the poll kind of suspect. For example, 2020, Biden won people ages 18-34 by 30 points. Most polls showing Harris about a similar margin, but a couple polls come up once in a while saying, oh, Trump is winning those. Which really kind of throws it off, because that shouldn't be happening. Something really weird has happened, something no one's really reading. Could that happen? Yes. Trump won the over 65 vote last time, but this time we're seeing some polls showing, oh, Harris is leading those in some polls, but others showing Trump leading. Don't know. But suppose conducting a little experiment. See what would happen if the polls were biased by X points for Harris. We take all the polling data and subtract X points from Harris, add X points from Trump, and see what happens in the electoral vote. Did it the other way. Exact that, and here are the results. Just play with the numbers a little bit and see what would happen. Okay, suppose there's no error. Basically, everything as it says it is. Harris would be win the Electoral College by 24 votes. See up here, that's 276 to 252. That tie, those 10 electoral votes in Wisconsin would go one way or another. But suppose it's off 2 or 3 points, and in favor of, they're underpolling the Republicans by 2 or 3 points. Trump could win by 86 to 96 electoral votes, or even further than that. Or they're undercounting the Democrats. It's about 3 points. It could be quite an 81-point electoral college victory for Harris. So he goes way one end to the other. It's what if they're wrong? Yes, you could be looking at a landslide either way if they're off by a couple of points. Electoral college landslide. There's a thing we're not going to know till the night of November 5th who's right and who's wrong. Back to voting. Now, most states, it's the Secretary of State's job to oversee voter registration and voting. It differs from state to state. Sometimes they have voting election commissions and so forth, but a lot of times it's just the Secretary of State. In Arkansas, this position is elected. In some states like Texas, it's appointed. Well, you go here to their voter page. Gives all sorts of information on it. Voter registration information here. Click on that. How to register to vote. Fill out a paper voter registration application. Contact your local county clerk. Secretary of State, Florida Elections Division. Call that number there. They're available at your local revenue office or DMV office. That is, you're really mad about your paying your taxes. Yes, you can register to vote there. That's convenient. Local library always has them. Disability agency, military recruitment offices, encouraging our troops to vote. And print a form, also print a form here in English and Spanish. Always can find out, your records. Contact your county clerk and find out. Talk a lot about absentee voting and military and overseas voting. Say about absentee voting in Arkansas. Well, I'd say every state has slightly different laws for various reasons. How to request an absentee ballot in Arkansas. 1, request to have an absentee ballot application sent to you by contacting your county clerk, county registered vote, or click here. And let's go to click there. Download and complete an absentee ballot application. Really easy here. Just clerk. Both registration. Select the reason for requesting an absentee ballot. I'll be unavoidably absent from my polling site on election day. Unable to attend because of illness or physical disability. I'm a resident of a long-term care residential facility licensed by the state. I see a lot of people in nursing homes that still try to vote, but sometimes you just can't get out. Unable to attend the polls election day to an observance of religious discipline or religious holiday. Following options are currently your residence. I currently reside within the county which I'm registered to vote. I currently reside outside the county which I'm registered to vote. I'm a United States citizen residing outside of the territorial limits of the United States. I'm an active service member of the United States Armed Forces. Spouse dependent of active service member, etc., etc. Please select the election which you wish to cast an absentee ballot. Preferential primary, Democratic, Republican, nonpartisan. See, even during the primary, there are some nonpartisan races that everybody votes for. November election, nonpartisan runoff, annual school election, etc., etc. Receive your ballot, pick it up from your county clerk, email, only available for certain voters, or mail it to me directly. printed name, address, date of birth, phone, address, etc., and signature. That's how you do it. Basically, it has these same things here. Qualifications to vote absentee in Arkansas. U.S. citizens, residences in Arkansas, temporarily living outside the United States. That is, you may work for the government and have to work outside the United States. Civilian contractor for the Army, State Department, working at the diplomatic staff or something. Member of the Uniformed Firm Services or a dependent. Unable to fend because of illness or something. You have a surgery coming up or whatever. Religious reasons and so forth. UACAVA, uniformed service member, merchant marine, overseas citizen. That's information about voting absentee. Deadline, suspicion application in person by close of business the Friday before the election. Mail electronic means by 7 days before the election. By authorized agent by 1:30 p.m. on election day. Deadline for ballot pickup. They say on election day, that is, suppose you are disabled in some way, you just can't get there. You have somebody go pick up a ballot for you. You still have the right to vote, even if you can't physically go to the polling place. Some states, they bring the poll to you. You sometimes see these pictures on the news on election day of these little voting stations being brought to someone's door, someone's house, so they can vote there. Or in Arkansas, absentee ballot. But yes, you can vote on election day if you are disabled or in a nursing home, something like that. Deadline for ballot pickup. Designated bearers no earlier than 15 days for presidential primary, or no earlier than 7 days for a runoff election by anyone else. No deadline specified in Arkansas. You should base your ballot pick upon the ability to return it to the county clerk on time, which is by the time the polls close on election day. Deadline for delivery voted ballot to election county clerk. In person, close of business Friday before the election. Yeah, it's a little confusing. By mail. Has to be served by the county clerk's office by 7:30 p.m. on election day. Means postal guy comes by at 4 p.m. That's the day they get them. By mail by 7:30. Authorization by 7:30. That is when the polls close. You may not fax or email ballot. Original ballot. Of course, I got the emails here and everything. Absentee ballot application just went through. Treating overseas voters. Voting guide. Let's see who the voting. Information on voting and how to register to vote. Requesting a ballot. See, when you're in the military, your voting location is the last place you lived when you were in the United States. Your last address. Election video series. Talks about the state of Arkansas. No, they don't have that anymore. So, ballot issues are coming in. Issues are referendum handbook. Yeah, the University of Arkansas also puts out a guidebook for the different initiatives. This is from 2024. Deadline for application of statewide initiatives. Deadline to file initiatives. General election, signature requirements. For constitutional amendment in Arkansas, 90,000 signature. based on a percentage of who voted in the last governor's race. At least 50 have to be signatures from at least 50 counties of each state, which means you can't just hang out in all the Walmarts in Pulaski County and start collecting signatures there. You have to go 49 other counties. Initiated Act 72,000. Remember, different. Initiated Act, that is simply putting a law on the ballot. Constitutional Amendment, it's the Constitution. Referendum, 54,000. But again, both from at least 50 counties out of 75 in the state. Signatures and so forth. And 70 pages of that. That's how you can put one on the ballot on its own. And the different election results. All the way back to 1938. Poll tax elimination, voted against. Bond funding, no. So forth. Yeah, a lot of county, a lot of state Secretary of State websites, they'll have information on previous elections in that state, sometimes broken down by county. So that's Arkansas. It's the United States. What about other countries? There are different ways they go about it. Some countries, you're registered automatically. Some you just show up. Iraq, when they first started their election, that's false Saddam Hussein. You just showed up, and what you do is, to show you voted, you dip a finger in this indelible ink. You have this little purple finger. Show that, yeah, you voted. Otherwise, a purple finger, you haven't voted yet, you can vote. So it's because it's kind of a chaotic system. They don't have much of an internet, phone lines still sporadic, no way of checking information, easy to forge identification. So what's the easiest way to see whether or not somebody voted? Look at the finger. That's some other countries as well. Some countries, well, you don't have elections, so it's really kind of a moot point. Or it's whoever the dictator decides is going to run the election. You can vote for me, or you can vote for me. Vote for my party, or not vote at all. They all have their different systems, different ways of getting elected. So let's take a look at a few of them here. Let's go to Britain, British Parliament, parliament.uk. This is their website. Just like we have a website for our Congress here, our state legislature, Parliament has one as well. News items, MP, that means Member of Parliament. Every country has their own little slang and shorthand. That's what they have in Britain. MP, Member of Parliament. PM is the Prime Minister. Yeah. Two House Parliament, the House of Lords and the House of Commons. They're about here, scheduled here. That's what it looks like. Now, by tradition, in the British Parliament, these two sections here between His Majesty's government, that is the majority party, that government is what's called His Majesty's government, or Her Majesty's government. And then the opposition party called the loyal opposition. Again, trying to emphasize where, yes, it's His Majesty's government, but we oppose that party, but we're loyal to the government. Just not shorthand. But by tradition, though, the space between these two benches is at least 2 sword lengths apart, dating back to the Middle Ages, just in case things got a little rough. That is tradition. You have here, this is the Prime Minister rising, discussing something with his cabinet. And these guys here in the back, up here in the nosebleed section, those are called backbenchers. They are people who are not ministers, that's not in the cabinet, but more kind of junior members of the legislature, so they kind of go by seniority. But they have a spot to sit anyway. That's what the British Parliament looks like. The House of Commons. And every week, something they have in the House of Commons is Prime Minister's Questions Time. If you go to C-SPAN or something, they'll usually broadcast this, but basically it's every member of Parliament has an opportunity to ask the Prime Minister a question about some policy or some issue. Now, initially, it was just basically whoever got up first and asked questions, but now they have to submit the questions first, but then they get the chance to ask their questions in person. And it's really interesting when the leader of the minority party and their shadow cabinet, that is, the people who would probably be ministers in a government that their party won, when they start asking the Prime Minister questions, they get up and sometimes they get into screaming matches with each other. That's entertainment. So the Speaker, you can see behind here, as chosen by Parliament, their position as a Speaker of the House of Commons is different from the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States. Speaker of the House of the United States, you are basically in charge of the House of Representatives. You decide the calendars. You decide who speaks. Basically, you're the leader of the majority party. You're basically the guy in charge. You're the line of succession to the president. Speaker of the House of Commons is more ceremonial position. Basically, all your job is to guide the debate. For example, during Prime Minister's questions, they'll point to whoever's turn it is to speak. Or if a conversation's getting too rowdy, bang a gavel, call the session back to order. Basically, second reading of the Terrorism Protection Bill, Protection of Premises Bill, rather. Second reading of the House of Lords Hereditary Peers Bill. We're talking about reforming the House of Lords. We're trying to make sure the people in the House of Lords are elected, not just there because their families held that seat for 500 years. On the House of Commons, business papers, governance, that's run different members, list of MPs.
Are there any people who have like that legacy where like their great grandfathers and like their lineage has been part of the
that really does happen. You got people who've been there for so long because the name's so popular, they just keep getting elected, reelected, one generation to the next. So this guy here, Stephen Kinnock, his father he's a labor member, but his father had been a leader of the Labor Party back in the 1980s. Yeah. It's made a little more dynastic in England. Something in the United States that really kind of rubs us the wrong way. But the little circle right here is a representing party, Labour Party, Scottish National Party, SNP, Aberdeen North, Aberdeenshire North and Moray East, Seamus Logan, Aldershot, Alice Baker, Ashford, Sojan Joseph, Labour Party. Arundel and South Downs, Andrew Griffin, Conservative. Now, in Arkansas, or in the United States, your district is set up by number. Congressional District 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, or 10, or whatever, at large. Here in England, it's basically by locality. Bolton Northeast, Bolton West. The city of Bolton, that area, got two different seats, the northeast end and the west end. Cleverly, Braintree, conservative. Bradford West, now Shaw, Labor. Breckenridge, Cleveland Hall, David Chadwick, Liberal Democrat, and so forth. Call them constituencies, not districts. Speaker. It's this guy here. The Right Honorable Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Next, it goes back to British tradition. You refer to elected officials as the Honorable, whatever, or Right Honorable. We still do that in the United States. Like address your letters on your Human Rights Project as the Honorable Congressman Bruce Westerman. Chambers, continuous initiatives, history traditions of the speakership. Very formal. They like their traditions in England. State room, state coach. Yeah, even though it's the 21st century, the Speaker of the House of Commons gets his own horse-drawn coach. Yeah, it's something to do. They don't give up their traditions easily in England. Committees, bills, what's going on? Now, current time in England is 1947 hours. Basically, it is 7:47 p.m. They're 8 hours ahead of us. That's what Parliament looks like. Well, what do the polls look like? But anyway, anyway. A lot of British firms that do polling in the United States. This is one of them, Ipsos. Their latest polls here: satisfaction leaders of the government, satisfaction how the Prime Minister running his country. New Prime Minister Keir Starmer, not off to a good start. 54% dissatisfied, 33% satisfied. Satisfaction with the Conservative Party. Rishi Sunak, leader of that, 24% approval rating. Government overall, 25%. British are hard to please. Important issues facing Britain today: immigration, NHS, there's a National Health Service, hospitals, healthcare. They have a system of national health insurance there, but different from ours, public health insurance. But spending on it, making sure there's enough doctors and nurses and hospital space available, that's a big deal there. Economy, 29%. Crime, law and order. See, a lot of these issues, very similar to concerns by American voters. Happens to be what it is, but there are some local issues there that are really kind of get people's attention. So who's voting for who in England? The Labour Party, that is generally the left-leaning party. Generally favored by younger voters, 18 to 44, have to be 18 to vote in England. Generally favored by those under 64, over 65. Generally should be more conservative party. They call it the Tories. Liberal Democrats, that's kind of the middle of the road party. Has a fairly consistent support, but it's a very small party. It used to be much more prominent than it is, but it's not. The Reform Party is kind of an anti-immigrant, anti-European Union party. More prominent people over 65, but not so much the younger voters. You have these nationalist parties wanting more rights or even independence from the different parts of Great Britain, such as Scotland or Wales. Plaid Cymru is one of them. Don't have very much support for them. Scottish National Party got pummeled in the election. So. But here's where it is. This is from The Economist. Now, the current breakdown of the political parties in British Parliament is Labour Party that has won the election. Solid majority, 403 seats. His Majesty's government. A Conservative, also called the Tories. Officially, they're just called the Conservatives. Tories is the nickname. 121. And you have others, Liberal Democrats. They've got 72. They picked up quite a few seats in that last election this summer. You got to understand something very particular. You hear names in the United States of political organizations, you hear them in other countries, they don't necessarily mean the same thing. In Japan, the Liberal Democratic Party is the Conservative Party. Liberal Democratic Party in England, kind of centrist party. Still be very considered fairly liberal by American standards, but Liberal Democrat is someone who's very liberal, very far on the left. These are the three main parties here. You can see they're polling the last election. Conservatives were very unpopular last year. When it got close to the election, though, Labor support started dropping off considerably. They tend to do this in most elections, poll very well, and have problems kind of sealing the deal. I think it's basically a problem with their get out the vote operation. The Conservatives steadily unpopular, making one bad decision after another, one unpopular decision. They went through like 3 prime ministers since the last election. Now, parliamentary systems, they try to go to a fixed term. Like in Britain, you have to have an election at least every 5 years. But if the situation is so bad, you can have what's called a no confidence vote. Vote out the prime minister, in which case you got the prime minister either the majority party can pick a new prime minister. If they can't decide on one, they can call for Parliament can call for a new election. The same thing in Canada and elsewhere. LDP. Not a lot of support, but fairly consistent, right around 10%, in about 12. Some minor parties, the Green Party there. Green Party is a lot more prominent in some other countries than it is in the United States. The Reform Party, they brought a lot of support. A lot of conservatives went to or voted reform. It's different in different countries. Usually they're fairly minor parties. You just junior members of a government. What they call it. Sometimes the term they use is supply and confidence. In a parliamentary system, that means you're not part of the majority party, but you're supporting with them. You're allied with them in Parliament. Basically, they do that in exchange for making a couple of your members of the cabinet or something like that, promising to support you on certain initiatives and so forth. But the Green Party is a pro-environment party. Because the environmental issues are very important to them. Generally, very liberal on social issues. In the United States, they never took off. Just seen more as extremists, having trouble organizing because of the nature of American politics. If you have an issue that's popular with one of the two major parties will take it up and make it their own, kind of stealing the thunder. But the Green Party of the United States, we can't really figure out what it is right now. It's not really pro-environment. It's not really basically pro-Palestine right now. That's in Britain. Let's look at other countries here. Let's go to Australia. This is from a newspaper called The Australian, theaustralian.com. And they have a tracking poll here. Labour Party and the Liberal Party. Basically, right, if it was election right now, it would be tied. They've been kind of going back and forth a lot lately. Can't really get to, no side can really gain much of an advantage. Current Prime Minister is Anthony Albanese, leader of the opposition, Peter Dutton, 37%, 45% Albanese. But kind of explain this here too. In Australia, they also have a two-house parliament, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Same. House of Representatives is the equivalent to the House of Commons in Britain, where most legislation originates. Right now, the leader is the Labour Party. Spelled with the U in Britain, but they don't have the U in Australia. 78 seats. The government. The opposition, Liberal Party, 40 seats, and the National Party, 15. The Liberal Party is actually more conservative. Labour Party is, like it says, was traditionally the party of the working man. Tends to be more liberal on social issues and social safety net. And usually, Liberal and National Party referred to as the coalition. LNP coalition. Liberal National. Sometimes the Liberal Party is called the ALP, Australian Liberal Party. Now, these aren't the only parties in the Australian Parliament. You have 18 that are not associated either with the government or the opposition. They're called crossbench. They aren't the Supply and Confidence. They aren't part of the official government. They aren't a coalition with the government. And coalitions are very popular in parliamentary systems because you got all these different parties. You need a majority. You need to try to work together. So these crossbench aren't part of any coalition. Just basically, they're there, but they're not. They're there. They do the job. They vote according to what they think their party and their constituents want, not necessarily according to what the party wants. But that's Australia. In Australia, they tend to have more fixed terms. You got an interesting system here in Ireland. General election be called, the government's final business for it can go to the polls. Here, speakers, poll here, but I don't want to subscribe. And so even in Ireland, you notice the articles here, they're really interested in what happens in the United States. Really concerned about that. What are swing states and how will they decide the presidency? U.S. election explained. How does the Electoral College work? Irish Times calls it a sort of democracy. So you really want to know kind of what the world thinks, let's look at their foreign newspapers. One thing you can figure out now about the United States is what the world looks at the United States is sometimes we may not have very much confidence in ourselves, but a lot of people around the world, even though they may be very critical of us, they expect the United States will do the right thing in the end. They have more confidence in us than we do sometimes. Pro has a lot of international polls here, but in Ireland, they speak English mostly because of years of rule by England, but they're trying to bring back Gaelic a little bit. They do have a lot of names, political names and so forth. And their parliament is the Taoiseach. They speak Gaelic. Main parties are Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and the Green Party. This is the part of the government.
They do Irish of that?
Yeah, it's 35 Fianna Fáil, 32 Fine Gael, 12 Green. Irish politics, it's compared to most of Europe and the United States, very liberal. Like in Scotland, maybe a lot of people are trying to break away from England, but the politics there, like the Scottish National Party, extremely liberal. Like I said, the Labour Party in England started out basically as kind of a hybrid socialist party. Still kind of is to this day. But the Fianna Fáil party, always called themselves the Republican Party. And by Republican Party in Ireland, I don't mean George Bush Republican. I mean Irish Republic. They were the party of Irish independence from England. Yeah. No, that's a group called. We'll get to them in a minute. But there were a lot of people who were pushing for independence, so they were a major party earlier in Ireland's history, but they actually are fairly liberal. Like Fine Gael, they're kind of a moderate party, but then you have the opposition parties. 79 government opposition in 79, 75. That includes a group called Sinn Féin. They have 33 seats. Now, just a very narrow difference here, but whoever gets the most seats, they get first crack at forming the government, deciding who the prime minister is going to be. That's in every system: Australia, Britain, Ireland, Canada, whoever else. Sinn Féin, translated from Gaelic, means ourselves alone. That party also has 7 seats in the British Parliament, mostly from Northern Ireland. See, when Ireland gained independence after World War I, the 7 northern counties of Ireland remained with Great Britain because they were mostly Protestant. The rest of Ireland is mostly Catholic. But there are a lot of Catholics and Irish nationalists in Northern Ireland still wanted to be part of Ireland. They're still pushing for that. And that's what Sinn Féin's doing. That's the IRA. That's the Irish Republican Army. This is basically the political wing of the Irish Republican Army. And it's a difference of politics just on one side of the border or another. For many years in England, Sinn Féin was considered a terrorist organization. In Ireland, they're considered heroes. They are an extremely popular group. And they have a very, what a lot of Irish voters think is a very practical platform. It's not just all about Northern Ireland, it's about what about the rest of Ireland, the workers, the healthcare system, Ireland's position in the world. In that opposition group, you have the Irish Labour Party, 6 seats. The Social Democrats, 6 seats. Kind of a democratic socialism with the Social Democrats. But you see a lot of elements that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. So far, who's leading the latest polls here? The last had an election, August 2020. They're trying to get an election together this fall. But sometimes you can call an election early before it's required because you think your polling position is the best spot. But Fine Gael over Fianna Fáil. Basically, looks like they're going to switch around, but probably keep that coalition together. Sinn Féin, that 19, on down the line. Green Party expect to lose a lot of seats. Again, these stars represent what party they're in the government coalition. But it's basically these 3 main parties that control Irish politics. For the longest time, it's been basically Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. But Sinn Féin's really kind of surged in the last 10, 15 years. One thing about Australia, may have heard the term sometimes Australian ballot. The term became popular at the turn of the century in the United States because of how Australia started a particular kind of election, how they and a tradition and a style that came to the United States. The Australian ballot it's the secret ballot. Australia. You see, in the United States, you didn't always have the secret ballot. Basically, you just sometimes you just write down your candidates on a piece of paper, sign it, and turn it in. That's it. You didn't have formally printed ballots. So basically, you signed your ballot. You could go back through those ballots and see who you voted for. That was a real problem because for northern factory workers, it meant their boss telling them, if you don't vote for my candidate, you're fired. Those days they could get away with it, late 1800s or 1800s. So they started pushing for the secret ballot that is an anonymous ballot, like we have at polls today, the Australian ballot. In the South, they started pushing for the secret ballot because that meant people who were illiterate couldn't vote. And the people who were mostly illiterate were, of course, whites and African Americans who would tend to oppose the planters, those in charge in an election. Take a look at another system here, Canada. Canada is divided up into provinces like the United States, but their provincial elections are at a different time than than their national elections. This all kind of different time periods. At the provincial level in Canada, it's like a mini parliament. You don't have a separate governor is elected. The premier, the head of the province, that's basically the head of the provincial legislature. Just whoever's the majority party of the provincial legislature. Just like what happened at the federal level, the prime minister is the head of the majority party. Here, 338 Canada. Here's where they stand so far. Canada got the Liberal Party. They've been in power for about 10 years. They have 153 seats, the majority. The opposition is the Conservative Party. They also called Conservatives, the Tories rather. They have 121 seats. Democrats there. Excuse me, the New Democrats. It's kind of a Western version of the Liberal Party. Liberals tend to be more popular back east, but because so many differences in Canada between east and west, Liberals have trouble kind of getting along with a lot of their policies. But they're in a coalition with the Liberal Party, and they have 25 seats. And then you have a French Nationalist Party, called the Québécois, probably mispronounced, 33 seats. Now, Justin Trudeau has been Prime Minister since 2015. His father was Prime Minister, a very popular Prime Minister from like 1968 to 1979, then voted out briefly, came back in from 1980 to 84. Basically, 15, 16 years. Very popular figure in Canadian politics, Pierre Trudeau. So popular that he's been around so long that when Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister, he visited the White House. Richard Nixon was president at that point. And you can actually see a picture, actually there's a picture circulating, a newborn Justin Trudeau as a baby being held by the First Lady of the United States, Pat Nixon. But the Liberals are in trouble right now, nationally. I'd say it's like a very strong turn toward the Liberal Party. Been a whole bunch of issues. People just kind of dissatisfied with them. Inflation, just the things are not going well for them right now. Liberal Party has basically dropped very sharply here in the middle of 2023, and you have a very wide lead for the Conservatives since then. NDP, the New Democrats, always been very consistent about, about 15 to 20 points. It's about normal for them. The BQ, about 6 to 8%, very popular in Quebec. Green, sometimes no more than 2 or 3%, but they turned very sharply against Trudeau. The election is scheduled for next year. They could call it early, but Trudeau's not going to do that because they'll win. But lately, it's been basically liberals in the mid-20s, conservatives in the low 40s. Liberals just can't seem to get a break this election. So, and the thing about Canadian elections is they'll stick one party for a long time, but they will turn very sharply against a party in one election. They've been doing that a lot since 1984. Justin Trudeau stepped down as Prime Minister last time. They brought a new guy in, and Liberals got beaten very badly. And they stayed for a small minority party until 1993. And then Liberals back in power again, taking power in a blowout election. They stay there for about 11 years. Then they lose in 2004 in a blowout election to the Conservatives. Liberals come back in a blowout election in 2015. And the election since then basically the same. It's kind of how it goes. It goes back and forth. Stability for one party for a while, then a sharp turn back the other direction. Now, the Conservative Party in Canada, it is a conservative party, like it is in the conservatives in the United States. The Liberal Party generally very liberal. The Democrats maybe a little bit more liberal.
That because, so from what I've seen, is that Canada is like the U.S., right?
In a lot of ways, yes. In a lot of ways, yes. In a lot of ways, no.
So what I've seen is that most countries doing that from the
Yeah.
but Canada, is that because from the influences of the United States?
Yeah, Canada does have a lot of American political influences, a lot of media influences. A lot of our TV shows and news, they get Canada. Because one thing, basically, we speak the same language. If you watch a Canadian newscast, it looks very much like an American newscast. The accents are basically the same. If anything you might say about a Canadian is, they may not have much of an accent at all. Whereas in the South, they have a very sharp, distinct accent. If they sometimes say how Canadians pronounce some words, that's very regional. Like we say about, they say about. But that's mostly an Eastern accent. Western Canada, I would say that. But 90% of Canada lives within 100 miles of the American border. Most Canadians are very, very close. Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, right here, Montreal, Quebec, all within 100 miles of the American border. And normally Canadian politics has been kind of cordial, parliamentary, because the idea kind of got to work together. The last few years, though, it's kind of taken kind of a sharp, ugly turn. They picked up a lot of American habits on politics. concerns a lot of Canadians because a lot of issues in a lot of countries, the conservative and the more liberal parties generally agree on a lot of things. Like in England, the conservative and labor parties, you will never hear anyone arguing that they should get rid of the National Health Service. That'd be electoral suicide in Britain. Generally, both are in favor of it. Similarly in Canada, they're very proud of their healthcare system, national healthcare system. You'll never hear either side say anything about it. But the last few years, a lot of things, the Conservatives have been saying a lot of things that kind of concern a lot of people in the Canadian middle and left. But people are voting with their pocketbooks. This area here, Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, those are called the prairies. Equivalent to the Dakotas, Montana. Generally more conservative. Alberta, you have a huge oil industry. Ontario, the largest province by size and by population. Usually that's a liberal stronghold in Canada. But a lot of support there in Ontario. Quebec, generally a liberal stronghold. Conservatives aren't liked much at all in Quebec. They tend to be against French nationalism there, but liberals, but they like liberal policies. Taking a sharp drop here. The Eastern Maritimes, when Trudeau came to power in 2015, every one of these seats was a liberal seat. And British Columbia, you got a real mix of everything. You got Vancouver and the suburbs are very liberal, but the mountain area is very conservative. But at the provincial level, they don't match up. In Ontario, the Conservative Party is called the Progressive Conservative Party. And it's actually the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party at the provincial level in Canada and Ontario is actually very conservative. That doesn't seem to make sense, but it does to them. Because they know the national party and the provincial parties don't match up. Not like they do in the United States. For example, legislative elections in Arkansas, Democrats in the state legislature versus in any state, Arkansas or across the United States, a lot of the policies, ideas are about the same. Republicans, ideas at the local legislative, state legislative, and federal level, generally about the same. Not so in Canada. Ontario, one of those notorious examples, the progressive conservatives against the who are liberal versus the liberals who are more conservative. Like I said, the BQ party doesn't exist at this provincial level in Canada. It's named something else. So, Columbia against generally tends to be very liberal, but so in this election, it tend to be more the NDPs more popular with liberals than you got conservatives. These are the territories here. Nunavut, mostly a lot of Native Americans living there. They call First Nations. It's the Native Democrats, Northwest Territories, NDP, Yukon Territory. Going conservative. Still more than a year out. No telling what's going to happen, but things aren't looking good for the Liberals in Canada. Looking very nice if you're a conservative. And that's about it. So you see kind of how elections work. Basically, you go in, you cast a ballot. And interesting thing in England about their political traditions is they'll count all the ballots in a constituency, and they'll have the central counting headquarters where they'll have the candidates for Parliament line up before the results are announced, and they'll while they're standing there, they'll read out the polling result. All the candidates are standing there. In some countries, they'll have, like in Germany, they'll vote by proportion. That is, you vote, basically you're voting for a slate of candidates. example, you have an area that has, say, 10 potential seats. If your party gets 50% of the vote, you get 5 seats. If the party gets 30%, they get 3 seats. The other one gets 20%. They do the same thing in Israel and other things. They call it proportional representation. The problem is, the idea is have more voices at the table, make sure more voices are heard, but the problem is, what if that voice that everybody hates? Because in that scenario, you could have like 95% of the population voting against you, and you still get a voice at the table. You still get a seat in Parliament. That means, though, is because in Germany, in Israel, the political party is a lot more fractured because you're not voting for a person, you're voting for a party, so there's less reason for the parties to come together and cooperate because proportional representation. But they'll go into those central polling locations and they'll vote like we do, and the results are called out. Usually everything that night, like in the United States, sometimes it might take a couple of days, but it's kind of elections look and work in other countries. Like I said, they have Prime Minister in Canada and Australia, Ireland, Britain. They have a Chancellor in Germany, the head of their Bundestag. In France, they have the President, separate executive, and the head of the French Parliament is called the Premier. Similarly in Italy, so on and so forth. That's how elections work in a couple of these different countries. Not necessarily fixed terms that we have here in the United States, but a lot of these countries are kind of moving more toward it. Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and call it a day.